Charleston. That house left the family in 1985, and it has had 3 owners since. I went to school at Ashley Hall here in Charleston, and then the College of Charleston. The maid always came early in the morning for breakfast, and then I'd be awakened by the shrimp man selling his shrimp. We'd carry on about what's the matter with the lady at 49. She ain't buy from me again this time. War shrimp, shrimpy, whoa, 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 shrimpy. And then the flower woman with the basket on her head, and she'd say, oh, do God, here come Annie. Annie with the basket on her head. And she would put the basket down on the floor of the piazza, and then you'd pick, the maid would pick the flowers for the day. Select what she wanted from the basket. And old Annie would carry some kind of cloth on her head so that basket would balance on her top of her lid, her head, her cranium. Then, go to school. Ashley Hall, the carpool would come. Then you'd get home by 2 o'clock for dinner middle of the day. Then you'd study, then run to the playground, then come back for supper, which was just sandwiches that the maid had left for the evening. My father was James Lucas, who lived at Hopsawee Plantation, Georgetown. And he was in the shipping business here, the Norwegian Consul, represented the National Cargo Bureau of New York, Lloyd's of London in shipping, and all kinds of things in that field. My brother took over. He went to work for his father, and then he died suddenly of a heart attack in 1979. And then now my nephew is running the business, James Lucas. When they were knighted by King Haakon of Norway to the order of St. Olaf, and he's been knighted. My brother was knighted, and my father was knighted. My best time I remember growing up was always going to my friend Theodore Warren's house on Lenwood Street. Her parents would always go upstairs early, and we'd sit down there and talk and play records, dance music. We played dance records to dance. And then we always came home by about 11 o'clock. The difference is when my children came along, they had places to go. They went to nightclubs, and there was always some kind of entertainment. When I was coming along, there was nothing during the war. The curfew was at 9 o'clock, and the fire bell sounded. At 9, you had to be off the streets of the city. The funniest place I remember back then was the windmill, which was up on the corner of Mount Pleasant and King Street. Everybody gathered there. Or we would go to the officers' club at the Navy Yard. Well, my early childhood with riding bikes, we'd ride to the East Bay Playground, and that's where we spent the afternoon. Then we'd come home after that. And with going to college, we either walked or rode a Victory bike. Nowadays, everyone has automobiles. We had none. There was gasoline rationing, shoe and sugar rationing. Victory bike was a bike with narrow wheels, and everything was narrow on it. Not much time spent on putting it together. I found it easier to walk. The difference between my grandchildren's world and my world is that we didn't have that much to do, and we were protected. We were not allowed to go to the movie theater. We had to be dropped. We had to be picked up. There was no walking around the city of Charleston. We were the headquarters for the 6th Naval District, and everybody was streets. With my grandchildren, then we're not at war, and they have more freedom, and they can go places that we never could because places weren't really open and operating. Now it's a whole different picture. It's hard to say where that generation is headed with that open life, because we all grew up, I think, much better with having a secluded life. Well, we were never left alone. Well, the difference is we were never left alone. Somebody was always taking care of us. And it was hard to even walk on the street. I was allowed to ride my bike to the East Bay Playground, but we always had somebody watching over us. Nowadays they have freedom, they run anywhere, and nobody has much to say about what the young people do anymore. The worst thing that happened were the 5 tornadoes of 1938, when our house on South Battery was wrecked, and we were having breakfast, and nobody knew what was happening. There was no warning. Doors were slamming, the windows were banging, and Daddy had the presence of mind to throw us flat on the floor. And oh, it was just panic. Well, nobody knew anything until it was over a couple of minutes later. And the next block didn't know that we had been so devastated in that one block on South Battery. And that tornado went on up King Street and wrecked St. Michael's Church, the City Hall, and the open market. And the last section of the market collapsed and killed 31. I went to school at Ashley Hall here in Charleston, and then the College of Charleston. And I graduated there in 1946. My favorite memory of the College of Charleston was always meeting all the students at the cistern and sitting around the cistern or being in the Tridella rooms playing bridge. I met my husband. I didn't meet him, I always knew him. The families were close. But he was always in an older group. And when he came back from World War II after fighting in the Battle of the Bulge, his group had gone with an older group, so he dropped down to us.